Good morning, everybody. I know that we'll have a couple people joining us later, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name's Anne. I work at MSU Extension as a training and development specialist, and I work across the state, but I'm located here in East Lansing. My pronouns are she, her, hers. All right, well, we'll get going. So I want to start out with just having you throw things in the chat and tell me what is your biggest problem in managing your time, or problems. You can put more than one in. So go ahead and think about something that is difficult and throw that in the chat so I can get a feel for what you guys struggle with. Distractions, says Karen. That's a pretty common one. Ordering, so prioritizing, says Jocelyn. Unexpected emergencies, says Sarah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so other people dictating your time pretty much is what Danny's saying. Yes, that is difficult. Okay, so those are some good ones. Urgent but less important tasks, taking time away from tackling not urgent. Yes. Oh, John, absolutely. And I work in training, so training is not urgent, but training is important. So I feel you. I feel you completely. My screen just jumped slides. Sorry about that. Okay, looks like that's all we've got. So one thing that I wanted to talk about right away was how some people seem to be good at managing their time, and some people seem to be not so great at managing their time. And so what's kind of the secret to productivity, or how do those people that are really good at it, like what's their magical formula? And there was research done in Germany with over 200 people, and this was back when beepers were more common, but this research I think still holds pretty true. It's kind of timeless. And so they would get, oh, sorry about the typo on my slide, temptations should have a P, but anyway, they would get they would have their beeper go off 7 times a day, and at that point they had to stop and answer some questions about what they were doing, on what they were working on. Were they tempted by something? Like, was there something that was distracting them? So it was really about kind of distractions and temptations. And then if something was distracting them or tempting them, there was a series of follow-up questions. So that's how the research was done. Do you have any predictions or thoughts about how the people that were more productive were maybe different in how they answered the questions, or what was going on, or how many temptations they got? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Like any predictions?
Because he knew something else. Just being good.
I think Lisa doesn't know she's unmuted. There we go. No predictions. So the answer to this was that the people who were better at resisting temptations were the ones that set up habits that made those temptations impossible. So it wasn't really about one personality type being better at resisting temptations, or being more focused, or being more productive. It was about them creating habits to eliminate temptations. So an example for that is, I don't want to gain any weight. I'm already at the size. I don't want to be any larger than I want to be. So sugar is a bad idea. I never keep cookies in the house because I love cookies, right? So it's just as simple as that. So when we're talking about people being really focused and on task, it's not that they have more willpower. It's that they're better at creating habits and environments that keep them focused and on task. So I wanted to frame kind of all of this discussion in that, and keep in mind that it's not some magical personality, and it doesn't make you like a better or a worse person because everybody has these temptations. It's really about like setting up your environment. So a higher self-control as a result of fewer temptations. So the environment had more impact. It was heavier on the results than a personality. So I just wanted to frame all of that in that. So now um, we're going to go back to the topic of just how you deal with this. And I'm going to put you in breakout rooms for just 4 minutes. And I want you to really quickly make me a list of at least 3 things that you do to kind of control your environment or to stay on task, to eliminate those distractions so you're not tempted. So like again, only like 3 or 4 minutes in the chat, and then I'm going to bring you all back. So let me just put you into breakout rooms, and we're going to do 3 breakout rooms in just about 4 minutes. So it should be open and you should be able to join them. So again, just a short list of how, like, strategies for avoiding distractions. Hi, Brennan Maxwell. We just went into breakout rooms. I think maybe Bren, you were already here and you left and came back somehow. So I'm going to just assign you guys to
Yeah, it kicked
one.
me out when I touched my headphone.
Oh, geez. I'm sorry. Here we go. All right, so people are coming back. The breakout rooms will close in about 20 seconds and then we'll continue. All right. Everybody's coming back here. Okay, great. We got back up to 12. All right, so I'm going to ask a couple of you to share, and you can either unmute yourself or you can put it in chat. But if a few of you could speak up and tell me what types of things you talked about for how you avoid distractions.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So in our group, we talked about like making lists just to help us like stay on task, silencing cell phones or putting it in the drawer. And then Karen said she does like 20-minute intervals and then takes a break, which I thought was a really good idea.
Mhm.
I think those were like a lot of our main ones. Oh, like listening to classical music, which is actually something I'm going to try now because I can't listen to podcasts. It's too distracting to me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try that, like the piano covers, she said. So I'm going to try
Yes.
that.
Yep.
That's kind of like the gist of what our group said.
Yeah, and you can even go into YouTube and YouTube like classical music for focus or whatever. Because
Oh,
some of it, some classical music is like a little bit more dramatic and like jarring, and other is like more like chill and relax. So yeah. Yep. Great ideas. Love it. We'll talk a little bit more about that sprints idea in a minute. I'm glad somebody came up with that one. Another group. Anything to add? If there was something different, please either put it in the chat or unmute yourself and share.
I can share a couple of things our group discussed. We kind of focused on blocking out distractions. So with phones, especially, like maybe deleting social media apps or changing kind of those notification settings.
Mhm.
I don't get notifications for any emails on my phone, just to limit that. And then someone else in our group also talked about having a separate quiet space for focused work. So if it's a meeting room or a conference room or some back space that you can kind of separate yourself, or even like leaving to go to the library,
Mhm.
or just telling your coworkers, I'm unavailable for 2 hours, just let me focus.
Yeah. Yes, I've done that many times when I have to write grants. That's exactly what I do. Anybody else?
Yeah, so our group talked about being intentional, scheduling time for breaks or distractions. It's things that you need to get done throughout the day. That's not necessarily work related. You know, be intentional about taking a break and then doing those things at that point in time. Also, scheduling time for specific tasks, like literally putting it on your calendar. This is this thing I need to do this week, so I'm going to block this time off to go do it.
Mhm.
And then something I mentioned that I do is I will work late at night just because I'm more of a night person, but someone else in the group said they do the same thing, but early in the morning. So working when other people aren't constantly emailing or texting or messaging you, and you can get stuff done and focus.
You guys are great. You're coming up with lots of awesome ideas. Let's see. I put a couple ones down. Let's see if any of these are new. So we talked about this one. Somebody talked about 20-minute intervals. Yeah, I do that with 30-minute intervals. They called them timed sprints. So closing your email, closing anything, putting your phone on silent, maybe putting an alarm on it for 20, 30 minutes and saying, I'm just going to work on this thing that I know I have to get done for this amount of time, and then I'm going to call it good. If you really focus and you do that, you'll be shocked at how much you can get done if you're not distracted by anything else. So that's something I had down. Taking scheduled breaks, somebody recommended that. For example, I work at home a lot and my kids get home from school at a certain time. I tend to block off a half an hour on my calendar during that time because I know I'm going to be interrupted anyway. And it gives me a break anyway, and it lets me interact with them and then go back to my day. Changing your meeting lengths from an hour to 45 minutes. Usually anything you can get done in an hour, you can get done in 45 minutes in a meeting. Like there's no reason a meeting has to always be an hour long. That's our default, but it doesn't need to be. And in fact, I have my Outlook calendar set up so that in the settings, my default meeting time is 30 minutes. And then, so that's what it makes it by default. And then I have to actually think, do I need more than 30 minutes? And then I have to change it if I want to. I'm curious, do any of you not use Outlook for email? Okay, cool.
Ren.
John does not use email, does not
No,
use Outlook, rather. Who
I
else?
do, but I just learned that you can actually set your Outlook calendar so it does 25-minute instead of 30, or 50 or 55-minute instead of 1 hour.
Uh-huh.
And that's something that I've been doing rather than scheduling 30-minute meetings or 1 hour meetings for that little 5-minute break between, because my day is meeting back to back to back to back to back. So
Yeah.
it gives you that little break built in.
Okay, and I see we have a few people that are using Google. Okay, so we're going to talk about some Outlook functions, but we won't spend as much time on it because it looks like about a third of you use something else like Gmail. I will say this, if you have access to Outlook, it is a learning curve and you will have much better tools for time management. So I'll just put that out there. I'm not saying you have to switch over, but it does have a lot more built in. Okay. Avoiding multitasking. I don't know if anybody talked about that one, but that's definitely important. Turning off your email. Somebody talked about that one. Also turning off those notifications. I don't keep any notifications on in my phone, and it drives everybody crazy because when I get a text message, I don't respond to it right away. But I have to train all my inner circle and say, if you need me right away, call me. I do not have my text messages notifications on. I have them all off because I don't want to be a slave to my phone. If you used Outlook, there's a focused inbox feature that puts all your stuff in the junk mail. In Gmail, it does already kind of sort your stuff automatically into different buckets. So in Gmail, it's already doing that. In Outlook, there's an option for focused inbox. Does anybody know where that is? Like, do you want me to show you real quick? No? Okay, it's under, if you go into your Outlook, it's under the view. So if you go into your email and then there's that view tab, it's right there and it says focused. Yeah, inbox. Blocking your social media. There's something called focus apps. I'm not going to talk about one in particular because there's a bunch of them, but if you just Google focus apps, there's a lot of different apps that you can install in your browsers. Some will work across like all your devices and it will do things like block Facebook. And it doesn't mean you can't get into Facebook. It makes it really hard and you have to go into a bunch of settings to override it to get into Facebook, for example. So it just eliminates that temptation of like doing something that you really don't have to do at that time. Keeping your phone out of sight, we talked about that one, and then isolating yourself, we talked about that one. So those are some of my ideas. I wanted to focus first, though, on the idea of articulating and prioritizing goals. So take a minute and on a piece of paper right now, or maybe you have a to-do list started already and you can choose 5 of these, but I want you to think about 5 things you need to do. Well, we'll say in June, not this month, because this month is almost over. So in June, what are 5 things that you need to do? Just go ahead and make a really quick list and then kind of rank the top 3. And we're going to come back to this and use it. So actually, please do it. I can't see that you're doing it, but please do it. Okay, so hopefully you've gotten at least a couple jotted down and thought about ranking them for priority. What's the most important? And then my next question would be, does your supervisor, and your supervisor is probably not on this call. I mean, I guess there's a chance somebody might be. But the question I would ask you is, would your supervisor agree with your rankings? And if the answer is, I don't know, or no, then this is a problem. So we all, not we all, but most people do keep to-do lists, right? I mean, this is the most common time management strategy, is to keep a list of stuff that you need to do and to check it off when you're done. But then my question would be, are you aligning yourself with your supervisor and or your team? And so if you think about goals, productivity is all about doing, reaching your goals. It's about being productive and doing things that further your job and your career and contribute to your work. So you have what you want as a priority, what others want on your team, like colleagues, and then your boss. And if you are all being torn in different directions with different priorities, this is making you all less efficient, right? Because what happens is it's like when you play tennis, when you're working on a project, sometimes there's a project that you have prioritized and you're like, this is really important to me. And so somebody else, you're depending on them for something. You send them an email and then you don't hear back, and it gets really frustrating. And sometimes when you don't hear back and the ball isn't bounced back to you, you in fact forget what the next step is. So this is a common phenomenon. So the thing to remember about goals and prioritization is that it really matters on more of a team level than anything else, because if the team is aligned, or if you're aligned with your supervisor, that's going to lead to more productivity. So my suggestion would be, as you keep your to-do list, when you have check-ins with your supervisor, or it could even be a quick email. Hey, supervisor, blah, blah, blah. I just wanted to clear with you that, these are my next priorities, and they might tell you otherwise. So just having that clear communication in whatever way makes sense with you and your supervisor based on what your relationship and job is like. Because the thing is busy isn't the same as productive, right? You can keep busy on your to-do list, but if you're working towards things that other people haven't prioritized, or other people are dropping the ball when you hit it to them, then you're not being productive. So yeah, that's my little lecture on prioritization, I guess. And then let's talk more about those goals. So I asked you to write down 5 goals, and maybe you didn't get all 5 down, but I want you to choose one work goal that you have either this month or this year. So just have something in your mind. So look at your list for a minute and select one. Write it down. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to take our goals and we're going to make them SMART. So some of you have probably already seen SMART stuff. It's used in education, it's used in coaching and personal development and all sorts of different goal setting, contexts. So for example, I had to create this time management course. And because I also serve people at Extension and they're all over the state, usually when I create a training on a topic, I try to put it in a couple different formats. So my goal was by June 2024, which is this week, create a basic training on time management for everybody that's accessible, 1 as a synchronous workshop in Zoom, which would be this, and 2 as an asynchronous learning in D2L. So that's my goal. So it's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. It's specific because I say exactly what I'm going to do. It's measurable because there's products, right? Either I did them or I didn't. It's reasonably attainable. Like I created it in a way that I knew I could do it. It's relevant to my work, and there's it's time bound. I put a deadline on it basically. So that's what a SMART goal is. And if you look at what you wrote down, think about how you can rewrite it to make it a little bit more specific. And it might be a big task. So for example, this isn't a huge task that I wrote down, but it's a couple hours of work, especially with the online portion of it, with the asynchronous stuff. D2L is a course management system, and it takes a little bit of time to design more interactive things in there. So what I did with this after I rewrote it as a SMART goal is I broke it down into deliverables. So I wanted to have a content outline for both. Like I wanted to basically have the content in an organized format. And then I needed to have 2 deliverables. One was, a workshop like this, which actually it's more than 60 minutes. So that was wrong. And then also something in desire to learn, so an asynchronous version of it. But then from there, I actually broke it down into tasks on my calendar and my to-do list, like for like taking the content outline. So if I'm going to be training on a topic I haven't trained much on before, what am I going to do? The first task I did is I already had some training developed on Outlook productivity, and I reviewed that. I reviewed some materials that we have on time management in an online training system we have called Elevate You, and I took notes on them. I did some web searches and I took notes, and I organized everything into an outline. So just the idea of is if you have a project that's kind of big, especially if you are somebody that gets easily distracted or you don't know where to start, it's really useful to take that goal, to break it down into like what you actually are going to, like the deliverables, the stuff that you're going to create out of it, and then break that down into tasks, and then stick those tasks onto your task list, whatever you're using. I use Outlook. You might use an app on your phone, you might use a notebook, whatever. But having those tasks be like that, we all know it's satisfying to check things off of lists, right? It keeps you motivated and it helps you know what to do next, instead of saying, oh, I have time blocked off on my calendar to do this. God, where was I? What do I need to do? How do I start? If you think about all that up front, it's a little bit better to manage your goals. And so that's, for example, what my task looked like in Outlook. Since we're talking about task lists, what task lists do you use if you use Google? Because I saw that about 4 of you are using Google. Maybe you're not using them. Google Keep. Okay. Karen, do you want to say a little bit about task list in Google? Do you want to say a little bit about Google Keep? I'm just wondering if other people know what it is that the Google users here.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different options in Google. While you're sitting in your Gmail, there's a circle icon with a checklist, and you can create tasks, but you can also add your emails. Like if you need to follow up on an email, you can add that to your task list. Or if it's a task that you need to do, you can add it to your task list and you can see it directly in the window with the Gmail your email is. It's like a side tab. But
Mhm.
then Google with Keep, you can do the same thing, but you can pull that up in a separate window
Okay,
and you can make like a bunch of lists.
cool.
So I have lists for different things, uh, like an event planning list, my active farm enrollments, and things that I need to do for each farm
Mhm.
to get them ready for verification. I have, like, if I'm working from home, what things can I work on while I'm working from home? If I don't have anything specific. Um, and then my grant and specializations, like my employee development plan, anything for that. And then any district tasks as well. So you
Cool.
can split it up into different things. You can also add reminders to lists too, I think both to Google Keep and to the tasks.
Nice.
And put the tasks will go on your calendar. Like if you say, I need to call this person on this day, you
Mhm.
can put a reminder in your calendar.
Nice. And that's all stuff that Outlook does as well. So thanks for sharing that, Karen. A lot of what I work with Outlook, so a lot of what I'm going to share is about Outlook, but I do know that Google has a lot of the same things. So it's more about the strategies than the actual technology. So for example, with Google Keep, if you just go into Google and Google that, you're going to get training materials on it. So don't let the how-tos trip you up just because you can Google a training video on anything, or a YouTube one at this point. Okay, so sorry about that. What I would suggest then is taking the goal that I asked you to choose for this next year, this next month, and think about how would you rewrite it to make it smart, and then how would you divide it up into deliverables. So my recommendation to you is to, when you have these bigger goals and these bigger projects, divide them up into smaller tasks and think about what the deliverables are, and that will help you get to those tasks, because that will just it'll keep you working along on your project instead of saying, God, where was I? What do I need to do next? It'll keep you from losing time, because especially some of you have mentioned you're pulled in different directions by like grants or funders, and that's really common, right? We're all pulled in different directions by different people at work, and even our family lives and everything else. So you're always getting pulled in these different directions. So that just goes back to the point that you really want to have tasks that are more broken down. And we all know that it's fun to hear the ding when you check it off. Like, that feels good. Like, I love checking off things. Ding! It makes me so happy. All right, so this next activity, we're going to use the stamping feature of Zoom. If you have not used it before, in your menu, there should be a kind of a big black bar with icons, and either attached to it or at the top of your screen, there will be a lime green or a bright green rectangle that says View Options. And if you select that, you'll see Annotate, and then you'll see this bar. So if you have not used stamping before, go ahead, take a minute to find how to use it, and just practice really quickly on this screen, stamping, just so you know how to stamp. There we go. Okay, we're all stamping away. So there's our stamps. Cool. All right, let me clear these. Hold on. Oh. Annotate, clear all drawings. Okay. All right, cool. It still got me in stamps. Sorry about that. Here we go. Okay. All right. So if we think about prioritizing, somebody had mentioned in the beginning that prioritizing is the hard part. And we talked a little bit about how training is important, but not as urgent. Oh, and by the way, we've just got, for you Google users, there's a side chat going on about keeping collaborators on calendars in Google, and yes, you can do that in Outlook too. You can share. But so the priority matrix is just a way to help you determine what to work on first, because we have things in our life that are important but not urgent, and we have things that are both important and urgent. Those are the fire drills, the emergencies that Sarah had mentioned. And then, of course, we have the stuff that doesn't really matter. That's less urgent or less important. So let's look at some examples for that. So let's say that you have a conference in August that you're going to go to, or maybe September. We'll say September instead. So just pretend that says September. Where would that fall? You have to book your flight. You have to do some searches, and you have to actually book a flight. So this is work related. It's for a conference. Where would that go in this quadrant? Go ahead and stamp it. Let's make it September instead of August. Yeah, sorry, I should have made it September. I realized that as you were putting things in more urgent. So it's not until September, so it's not really urgent. Usually flights go up in price about 6 weeks or 5 weeks before they go off. So it doesn't really matter yet, unless you have a deadline for the fiscal year or something, then it might become more urgent. But it's one of those things where it's important. If you don't do it, then at the last minute, you're going to be buying a $3,000 ticket, and somebody in your accounting department is going to be pretty annoyed with you because you procrastinated. So it's important, but you don't have to do it right this second. So that would go maybe there. Got to keep clearing these. Here we go. Clear all drawings. Okay. Okay, next one. Checking Facebook. Where would that go? Y'all should know this. You're like, yeah, we know. And I'm Gen X, so Facebook is my thing, but I'm sure if you're younger, it's, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever your little junk food social media may be. Okay, let me clear those. Clear all the drawings, go to the next one. finishing a budget for grant deadline. That's tomorrow. Yeah, it's urgent and it's important, right? So not really rocket science. You guys are getting the hang of it. But yeah, just I think if you have a lot of tasks, this type of little matrix is going to help you decide what to work on first. And what you really need to think about is making sure you're not forgetting about that, okay? Because a lot of the goals that you have, like when you set goals for the year, for example, I set professional development goals for myself for the year. Those are important things, and I'm going to be asked about them in my performance review, but they're not urgent because it's always far off, and it's training. It's not urgent. You don't have to do it right now. But the thing is, if you don't pay attention to that upper right quadrant, it's going to impact you negatively. So I guess that's my biggest takeaway with this is make sure you're not ignoring that stuff that falls in that quadrant. And in order to not ignore it, some of you had mentioned this before, block it off on your calendar. And it might be, if it's a big project that's not urgent, but it's important, that might be, you know, every other week, just blocking off a 90-minute block somewhere on your calendar and putting that on your calendar like that far in advance, like months in advance. And also committing to not scheduling over that time unless it's absolutely necessary, just so you get that stuff done. So, yes, that is where things get dropped often right there. And then the last one, attending today's weekly update meeting. Where would that go? Yeah, it's urgent because it's today. But in reality, if you have a grant deadline with a budget that's due tomorrow, you're probably going to skip it because it's an update meeting. You can just ask people to give you a summary, or you can stop by their office or give them a call or ask for the meeting notes, whatever. I would say this, you know, when you have urgent issues that are important, don't be shy about canceling other things. Especially if it's something like an update meeting where it's like, I don't really have to be there. I'm not leading this. Like I can bow out. So that's my advice on stuff like that, is just knowing that you don't always have to be it. Just because you're invited to a meeting doesn't mean you have to go. Unless your supervisor tells you have to go. Right? All right. Okay, moving along. So yeah, that's just the summary. So when you look back then, earlier I had told you to think about 5 to-dos for this month. So just scanning down the list, just notice which ones are more important. And so maybe the top priority should be those ones that are important and urgent, the ones like finishing the budget for the grant deadline tomorrow. So just, you know, this is helpful in prioritizing your task list. That's all that I'm saying. And it will help you just think about what to do next. And then the other thing that I recommend to make sure you're getting to these things, especially those things that are important but not urgent, is, let me clear the stars. There we go. Clear all drawings. Is that you could use something like this, and you might have another strategy for this. So if you have a better strategy, go ahead and unmute and share with the group, because the thing about time management is I can give you all these ideas. Not all of them are going to work for everybody, and that's fine. Everybody's got to find what works for them. But having some kind of monthly check-in with yourself or with your supervisor or with your team, or just putting it on your calendar at the end of each month, like the last working business day of each month, putting a half-an-hour appointment with yourself where you say, what did I plan to do this month? What did I do that I didn't plan to do? Okay, so what's eating up my time that wasn't a plan, and why is that eating up my time? Like, is there a reason for it? And what did I not do? So you need to carry it forward. And you can do this with your supervisor if you want, but you don't have to. Just make sure you're doing something like this at the end of a set period of time. It could be like a week, it could be a day, it could be a month, you know, whatever works for you. and the cadence of your work, but just reflecting on monitoring yourself. Does anybody have any other thoughts on how to kind of monitor and prioritize tasks? Because again, we all have things that are different for different people. Okay. All right, we're going to do a really quick poll. And this is for you to just kind of reflect on your own working style and stuff like that. So where did my poll go? Sarah, mine just disappeared. It doesn't let me launch the poll anymore. Can you?
Yeah, sure. Here
Oh,
you
no.
go.
Oh, it was under more. I'm just a space cadet. Anyway. So there's 4 questions here. So just go through and take a minute to answer these. Okay, we've got 8 of you answered, so we're still waiting for a couple more. So go ahead and answer if you have not yet. And as we're waiting, in relationship to checking in, Karen says that she has an annual plan of work and quarterly check-ins to see where she's with for goals and plans. And that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And then making sure when you make those goals for the year and that plan of work, again, the idea of really breaking it down into tasks that you can check off, it's going to be really helpful. All right, we'll give you just a few more seconds for those that haven't answered. Almost everybody has. All right, somebody might have stepped away, so that's fine. Sarah, can you share the results? Okay, so I asked these questions for a reason, and we'll get into it for a minute, but I like looking at where people are at. So most people like morning for getting stuff done. One of you mentioned late night. Nobody likes afternoons. That's interesting. Global or specific thinker kind of split in 2. More of you like working alone than with others. And more of you like to plan rather than be spontaneous. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so I'll stop sharing. We can stop sharing that now and close it out. Cool. All right. So, and this is important because as I mentioned, not everything works for everybody, and that's fine. Hold on, let's go past that. Okay, so global thinker versus specific thinker. So global thinkers they're big picture people, prioritizing vision. They're motivated by generating ideas, but they might ignore details. This would be me. And they're distracted by interesting problems. This would totally be me. This is where I fall completely and utterly. Specific thinkers, they're good at prioritizing systems and checklists. You're good at generating processes. You like the details, but you can get lost in the details and lose track of the big picture. So does anybody want to share an idea they have for overcoming a weakness that they might have that's showing up under one of these categories? Any thoughts? Y'all are quiet. All right, that's fine. So for global thinkers, for example, I actually have a master's degree in English and I can write really well, and you would never know it by my emails. And it's because I don't proofread them and I'm really sloppy, and it's because I'm a big picture person and I don't like details and I don't like editing and I think it's boring. But that's bad, right? It makes it look really unprofessional. So I turn on spell check and grammar check and I download Grammarly, like simple things like that. So for global thinkers, creating simple basic routines, writing everything down, using those checklists more, because the specific thinkers love the checklists already. The global thinkers usually don't. They might not always do it. Making sure you're being really clear when you communicate, and things like using spell check. Then we have a couple things in the comments. Lisa says a person can be both. That's true. She was an accountant for years, specific to details, but then became more of a global thinker. So that's awesome that, Lisa, you can move back and forth between the two depending on the task. And that's a real skill. And I say I'm a global thinker, but I can actually get into the weeds. Like I love processes, for example, even though I'm global. So right, you can go back and forth. Like I says, visualizing things on paper helps concrete the connections and the pathways. Yeah, so writing stuff down. Exactly. All right, the next one was a team thinker versus an individual thinker. So a team thinker, of course, likes working with others, might lose track of specific tasks, and sometimes helps too many people too much and then ends up not doing their own stuff, right? They're kind of like the helpers. They want to work as a team and talk to this person and help them and work on that project and kind of be a little bit all over the place. Whereas an individual thinker wants to be alone and focuses more on the tasks than the people, but they might not be always keeping their coworkers updated. So any thoughts on strategies for either side here for dealing with some weaknesses or problems that might come up? If you have some thoughts, you can unmute or you can throw it in the chat. So for people that are more team thinkers, the managing distractions piece that we've already talked about is really huge. The idea of isolating yourself, turning off your notifications, turning off your phone, doing things like that, shutting your office door or going to the library, just keeping yourself away from people, including social media. Managing time when interacting with others on social media and meetings and on breaks. So yeah, I'm just making sure you're not spending too much time socializing. And a big one was changing the environment. Individual thinkers, like making use of it by really looking for those quiet workplaces so you can really focus. Thinking about how you're going to keep the coworkers in the loop because they can't read your mind. So a lot of time individual thinkers under communicate. So just thinking about strategies to make sure you are really communicating. Those are some habits to form. Proactive versus reactive thinkers. So proactive thinkers are motivated by avoiding problems. So you plan in advance a lot, right? You're making plans, you're thinking about things in the future. It's very future oriented. You're good at double checking, editing, finding errors, but sometimes you get stuck in specific tasks. Reactive thinkers tend to be motivated by accomplishing tasks, but they like risks and they like to multitask, which again, these aren't good or bad. They're just different. But it just helps you think about what you can do differently related to your time management. So if you're more proactive, really making sure you're making time for the important issues on the to-do list. So the importance of really prioritization, I guess, so you don't get bogged down with little details, letting go of the small issues, delegating them to other. Proactive thinkers tend to be like a little bit more into control and perfection. So I would suggest the 80% rule more often than not, the 80% rule being when it's 80% done, it's probably done if you have those perfectionist tendencies, because you can, like, everything can always be done better, right? So you just have to find out what the threshold is for done enough. Whereas reactive thinkers avoid spreading time on multiple issues. So try to not be all over the place. Using that quadrant and prioritizing by urgency, slowing down. That would be me. I move too fast and make sloppy mistakes all the time, and I know it. So I try to, use some of these strategies by blocking off time and really focusing and thinking before I send the email, thinking before I mark something as complete. Just making sure you're getting things done the right way the first time. So those are just some thoughts. Does anybody have any other things that pop into their mind when they think about their own personalities and what works specifically for them, given the way that you work, your preferences? Any other shares? Okay. All right. So technology to the rescue. There's a lot you can do with technology. A lot of my ideas focus on Outlook, but we'll also talk about how Google might be able to do some of those things for those of you that are using Google more. Oops. I don't know if this is a choice in Google, but in Outlook, you can choose to, hold on, sorry guys. There we go. You can choose to open your calendar first in Outlook. So this little GIF is just showing you really quickly how to do that. But what you will do is you'll go to File, and then you go to Options and Advanced, and there's a place there where you can see there it says Start Outlook. So again, it's File, Options, Advanced, and then there's that place, Start Outlook, in this folder, and you can start it right in your calendar. Why would you want to do that? Well, you want to do that so you don't start jumping into email first thing in the morning without realizing what your priority is. You might want to do that if you're forgetful about 8 a.m. meetings and you're the type of person to get really caught up in a project and not even realize you had an 8 o'clock Zoom. That would be me again. I'm curious. So for people that use Google, Google defaults to your email when you open it up usually. Is there a way to default it to your calendar or no? You know? I don't think there is.
I don't know that, but I always just have my email on one screen and my calendar in the other screen. So I'm constantly looking at both.
Yeah, that's a good solution then. Yep. So again, like these are concepts and I'll tie them to technology, but there's more than one way to accomplish it. So basically the main concept here is just look at your calendar and task list first. Don't dive into emails. That's all. Not responding to emails as they come in. So this could be as simple as turning off your notifications. This could be as simple as closing your email and only opening it at certain times. Lisa says you can format your screen so the calendar can be open to the right of your emails. Okay, so in Google you can kind of split it like that. I have gone into my settings and I have turned off all notifications. If something is really urgent, somebody should be calling you. And if you haven't trained your colleagues to do that, then that's really kind of more on them, because I think it's very, very well established that spending all day responding to emails, jumping on them the second they come in is not a good practice. Multitasking makes us less productive, and that's multitasking. So setting aside time for emails, easier said than done, but making sure you're not being a slave to it, like Pavlov's dog, you know, every time the bell rings, you're like, ooh, 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 email. Yeah, no, don't do that. This I know you can do in all different emails. There's lots of, whatever email program you're doing, it allows for signatures. And so the signature can be pre-populated, and probably you already did that. But if you haven't figured it out, one way to use those signatures in Outlook is for repeated responses. So for example, I organize an event called New Staff Onboarding. I'm constantly getting emails. When's the next dates? Where do I register? So I have this email signature that I actually have created. And then when I'm in my email, I can just change my signature to that and it populates the email, if that makes sense. So this is the same idea as like creating drafts or templates. And those are other things that most mail systems let you do. The idea of thinking, what are people always asking me about and that I'm always responding to them about, and creating some type of draft email, some type of template, something that's really easy to just keep reinserting so you're not wasting time. And so the other option that I'm showing you in this little GIF is on that right-hand side. It's kind of hard to read in the PowerPoint, but that right-hand side icon is view templates. And so the other thing that you can do is you can create these templates, and it's the same concept. It's just having prepackaged responses that save you from spending a bunch of time retyping the same stuff over and over again. Again, multiple calendar systems let you do that. This is a shot of, my calendar. I have colors, and I'm a single mom. I work. I'm very busy between my personal and my work life. And so if I don't keep both my personal and my work calendar in one place, I go insane. I recommend that people do that. I know there used to be this thought of, oh, you have to separate work and personal life, but we all know that that's kind of been changing even more and more, especially with working remotely. It's more about making sure you're putting in the hours for work and getting the work done, right? And sometimes work-life balance, it makes it so that you have to work late at night to take off time to take your kid to the orthodontist. So what I do is I color code, and it gives me a real quick glance at my calendar. So the green is when I'm presenting stuff because I do a lot of training. The orange is just normal work-related stuff, and the blue is all of my kids' soccer stuff, which is significant in my life. So just the idea of somehow visually organizing your calendar using categories, using colors, and then putting it all in one place. So it lets you in the beginning of the week kind of get a snapshot of what your week looks like, and you can see, oh wow, Wednesday I'm trashed. I just need to plan to be productive on Tuesday on these tasks that I have to get done this week because there's no way I'm getting to it on that other day. So just giving yourself like those visual reminders. Google also has an app for to-dos. And even if you don't use Google and you want to use the Outlook app, you can. But the idea of using a to-do tracking list that is also on your phone. And most of them are at this point. So the upper picture is an example of what my to-do list looks like in my Outlook. And then I also have it on my phone. I showed the picture in the lower right just shows how if you flag something, it goes automatically in Outlook into your task list. And it sounded like the Google tool that you were talking about also does that same thing. Karen was talking about that, the keep list. Google people, any other thoughts on to-do lists that you wanted to share with each other? It seems like Karen knows Google pretty well. Okay. Oops. Using rules to auto-file emails. This is something that when you get reoccurring emails that you want to keep, maybe you want to drag them into a folder, you can set up rules that automatically do stuff with them. I'm not going to teach you how to do it because not all of you use Outlook, and you can Google just set up rule in Outlook and it's going to walk you right through how to do it. But if there's emails that you're always getting that you need to file, but they're jumping up your email box and they're driving you crazy because you keep opening them up, just set up a rule, get rid of them, have them go into a folder. Using delay send. I do this when I want to send somebody an email at a specific time as a prompt for them to do something. Maybe it's a training announcement and I don't want it to come out at 9 a.m. on Monday morning because everybody is still waiting through their email at that point. Maybe I want it to come out Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. as the first thing in their inbox. Whatever, for whatever reason, there's options to delay send emails. I've also even used this in addition to my tasks for super, super important stuff I don't want to forget to do at a given time. So delay sending emails is a nice strategy. And then some other things that just I would randomly recommend is, so I use OneDrive and Outlook, but even if you use Gmail, this concept applies. Having your files for your email matched your file structure for OneDrive or your hard drive or wherever you're storing your files using the same file structure. We get a lot of emails and a lot of them you need to keep, but if you have a similar file structure for your email and for your hard drive, it's going to make it easier to find stuff. Using any Zoom integration features that happen with Outlook or Gmail saves time. Sharing calendars that can be done in both email systems, Gmail and Outlook. Outlook has, by the way, a new version. The old version lets you do polls, but I just want to put this out there for you, those of you using Outlook. When you switch over to the new version of Outlook, which it is available, I don't know if your organization wants you turning it on or not, because I'm not in IT, but it even has a polling option for meetings where when you schedule a meeting in the new Outlook, it lets you go into the scheduling assistant and choose multiple times and then send a poll to everybody that's invited to the meeting so they can say, I'm available, I'm not available, and this is my preferred time. And so that's really, really handy if you work in an environment where people don't just let you share calendars and plop appointments on their calendars. So that's something that works. And of course, picking up the phone, right? Just as being a really easy scheduling idea. So before we move on to this one, any other ideas using technology for how you manage your time, how you control your email and your calendar?
I've used Candidly as an extension in Outlook, so people can easily, outside of my organization, can see my calendar. And that's helped a lot with that. So I don't have to be like, yeah, I'm free on these 5 days across. So I've just started using that. It seems pretty handy.
Yeah. And in the new Outlook, again, there's trying to find an email. It's baked right in. There's one in Outlook where you can, when you create a message or when you email, what I've done in I'm gonna stop sharing to show you guys this. Hold on, let me go into my email. So what I have done, let's see, I've got a new email. Let me share screen again over here. Okay, so this is under the options in the new Outlook. So I actually set it up in the new Outlook and then I went back to the old Outlook. I've added this link to my email signature that says book time with me. And when people click it, oh, I've got to stop share and share another screen now. Hold on. Too many share screens. When you click it, hold on 1 second. I'm trying to get this. There we go. Okay. So when you click it, it goes into Microsoft Bookings. So this is a part of the Microsoft 365 suite that is integrated with Outlook. And so, Sarah, you could also do it right through this product. And again, it's available to time with me. I've set up basically when I'm willing to take appointments. Looks like I haven't set these up very much yet, but and people can click on it and schedule right from here, and they don't have to use Outlook or Microsoft 365 or be in your organization. So there's other tools like that too. I guess that's my main idea. And so Google around and find what works for you. But yeah, that definitely is a great way to save time in scheduling emails, so you're not going back and forth. Are you available Tuesday at 6? No, I'm not. What about Wednesday at 9? Yeah, you don't want to do that. What else? Does anybody else have any things related to technology and emailing and calendaring that is a good time saver? All right, well, if you think of them, you guys can always unmute yourself and you can always put in the chat. Okay. All right. So I wanted this is a Randy Dean thing. If you don't know who Randy Dean is and you're really into this whole productivity stuff, I would look up his YouTube channel. and check him out. But Randy Dean is a self-proclaimed productivity expert. He does focus on the Microsoft 365 tools, not on the Google stuff. So just know that. But one thing he talks about is he actually has it as the 4Ds, and I turned it into the 5Ds. So I've adapted this system from him and kind of modified it. But the idea of when you're opening up your email, you don't want to be going back to the same email many, many times. You want to like decide what to do with it right away. So you might want to delete it. You might just look it over and be like, I don't care, that's garbage, I'm going to delete it. Dragging it, and that means having your folders set up in a really easy to use format for you to file stuff, and having that folder structure mirror your hard drive. If it's something that takes under like 3 minutes, for example, I mean, you can choose your threshold, but if it takes just a short amount of time, just doing it and then deleting it, delegating it, assigning it to somebody else, forwarding it, or, you know, if you are using apps where you can assign tasks to other people, which in Outlook you can on your task list, you can assign a task to somebody else, or deferring it. So deferring it again would be making it into a task with a deadline and putting it on your calendar. See, we've got some stuff that's coming up in chat. Karen says Atomic Habits by James Clear. Okay, great. I'm going to check that one out. Good resource. Danny says Google Calendar allows you to set your work hours. Yep. And other Google users will get that notification if they're emailing or trying to schedule an event with you. Awesome. Yes. And Outlook lets you set work hours as well. I generally work from 8 to 4:30, but I have my calendar set up so you can schedule with me between 8:30 and 4, just because I like time in the beginning of the end of the day for sanity and cleanup and prioritizing and stuff like that. But yes, setting your work hours so people know what they are. Absolutely. And so then just a little bit more on this. Again, when you're deferring it, you can actually take things in Outlook, and I'm not sure about in Google, but when you drag them to your task list, it automatically, if you take the email, drag it to your task list, it automatically creates a to-do. So just being aware you can do stuff like that, because the main point is this, right? Email can suck up a lot of time, and it's not your job. So what you need to do, what is your job, is to get good at using email and to get, you know, good habits and learn how to use all the functions within whatever email system you use so that you're using it really, really efficiently. Okay. All right. So back to you guys. I left time at the end in case there were questions or ideas you wanted to share, because that's pretty much it from me. Those are all my secrets, and none of them are, you know, earth-shattering. But what thoughts or ideas that we didn't cover do you have? Maybe either questions or ideas or tips? Anything from any of you guys? Nothing. Okay. All right. So we're going to end a little bit early, but before we do, and I want you to do this, I have this at the end of presentations for a reason. It really helps you apply what you're learning. I want you to think about one thing you're going to start doing based on what we talked about today. One thing that you already knew about that you're like, yep, I was already doing this, and this presentation just reaffirmed that this is smart and I need to keep doing it. Continue. And then one thing that maybe you're doing that you realize, oh, I need to stop checking my email all the time, or I need to stop responding to notifications or whatever. So take a minute and think about something you're going to start, something you're going to continue, and something that you're going to stop. And then I want you to share one of those ideas in the chat, but saying what it is. Like, for example, I'm going to stop using email notifications. I already have, but that's just an example. So putting something like that in the chat. So take a minute to think about these 3 categories and then throw something in the chat that you're going to commit to start, continue, or stop doing. Yeah, Sarah, start using those task lists. You'll love it because it goes on your phone too. Yeah, blocking time off. Yeah, blocking time off to just manage your time. It sounds counterintuitive, but taking the time to manage your time makes that makes the whole month go better. If you take that time to manage your time, to prioritize, to reflect on what still needs to be done, what didn't get done. Great. Okay, well, I hope you got at least a couple ideas out of this. As I mentioned before, time management, it's a personal thing. It depends on your style of work, your comfort with technology, your working preferences. But hopefully this gave you some ideas to reflect on, and not all of them are going to work for you, but hopefully a few of them do. I thank you for your time. I'm going to give you the gift of 13 minutes back to your day. And if you ever have any other thoughts on this or any other great hacks that you think of, please share with me, because I'm always like, I love to hear back from participants because they often have awesome ideas. Yes, I can share this. I will send this to Sarah and she can share these. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a fabulous, God, what day is it? Thursday. Have a fabulous Thursday.